Welcome back to the Donkey Vote podcast with Francis.
Tobias.
And George. These interviews will be focusing on the past careers of politicians before they entered parliament.
With a strong intention to our audience that anything is achievable no matter what you studied in university or college.
If you like this sort of content, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. Also, we are on YouTube and Spotify, so make sure you follow us on those platforms.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram as well to keep updated with the latest episodes and reels that we release.
Enjoy the
interview.
And today we are joined by Sean Canney, an independent, representing the constituency of Galway Southwest, I believe.
Galway East.
Galway East. Okay, Galway
Yes.
East.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So great to have you on here, Sean. And just for our audience who may not know an entire lot about you and Galway East, could you give us a little brief description of it, and yourself, of course, just before we get into the questions?
Yes. Well, first of all, I live in a place called Belclare. It's about 3 miles outside the town of Tuam, um, which is in the north end of the county, and
Okay.
that's my base. Um, so Tuam would be famous for the saw doctors, amongst other things. We belong traditional of music and sporting. The constituency I represent would include towns like Athenry, Gort, Lottery, Portumna, Kinvara, Hetford, Dunmore, Montbello. So basically, it's the east side of the city and North Galway down into South Galway, and we border on Roscommon, and we border on Mayo, and we border on Clare. So that's where we're situated. Now, I myself, I'm a native of Belclare, just outside Tuam. I was born there back in 1957 in a little thatched house. I'm one of seven children. There are three older and three younger. I'm in the middle, so they protect me from both sides. I've three brothers and three sisters, and that's it. And they are all, no, one brother is in Abu Dhabi, and the rest of my family live here in Ireland, and most of them live in the constituency, which is good, you know. So that's basically it. And I entered politics back in 2004 as a local county councillor. Um, and I was subsequently elected again in 2009. I was elected again in 2014. And in 2016, I was successful in getting elected to the what we call the Dáil, our national parliament, as a TD to represent Galway East. And I was re-elected again in 2020.
Yes.
And we'll see what will happen the next election.
Exactly. And I've been hearing whispers that the next election could be in November, from what I've heard, or it could be in March. I think, as Cathal Berry was telling us last week, he said 60% chance it'll be in March and 40% chance it'll be in November.
Yes, and the percentages fluctuate on a daily basis and sometimes on an hourly basis. But legally, we have to have the election by the March, the latest. And the question is, will the government call the election earlier or not? Preferably to get it done and dusted before Christmas, so that we can all relax one way or the other, depending on the result. So we'll see.
Exactly. And from what the polls are saying as well, it's going to probably be quite close. And there'll probably be another coalition government, which is quite rare, which actually is quite good to see in Ireland. The two main political parties, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, I guess being able to work together, and historically have always been really, really separatist. One being very Irish Republican, the other one being quite closer towards being pro-treaty and closer to the UK in a sense, and pro-European.
Yeah, and I suppose when I was first elected to the Dáil, I was involved in government and negotiated the programme for government as an independent, with Fine Gael at the time, and we formed a government. And the deal was that Fianna Fáil weren't in government, but they uh, abstained from votes of confidence in the government. So that government lasted for 4 years, which was the first of its type, where we were a minority government, but we were still able to survive. And then in 2020, in the next Dáil session, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael came together with the Green Party to form the majority. And they've held that now for the last 4 or 5 years. So we've had coalitions before, but traditionally back in politics in Ireland, when I was a young fella, it was Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. You know, there were the two main parties, and
Mm.
Fianna Fáil would have been the dominant party in most elections. Fine Gael sometimes would get through, and they might get set up a coalition with the likes of Labour once or twice to form a government. But politics keeps changing, and we've had the growth of the numbers of Sinn Féin deputies now that are being elected. So they have become the main opposition party at the moment.
Mm, mm. And
Interesting
as you
time.
said, very interesting times. And I'm probably not going to get into your opinions on Sinn Féin. We'll try and stick away from that, I guess, Sean. But
Huh?
yeah, it's been quite interesting times, I guess, in Irish politics, especially from, the start of Irish republicanism back in the 1920s and 30s all the way to now. It's been quite a tumultuous time.
Absolutely. And I suppose that we have, as a nation, evolved a huge amount. And back in the 60s, we had the troubles in the north, and we had a lot of violence in the north over reunification of the 32 counties. And it turned into a terrorist war. And when I think about what's happening in Israel now at the moment, and are in with Hamas and all that's going on there, I would say that we are very lucky in this country that we were able to broker a peace deal, the Good Friday Agreement, which has given stability in terms of um, moving forward as a nation. And while we were in the 26 counties, we worked closely with Northern Ireland and with the UK government because we're small. The six counties in the north is smaller, and we just have to be able to work together to survive in the world that we're in nowadays.
Exactly, exactly. And you can't. I guess, you've got to move past those sort of tumultuous days in the past and you've got to look forward because as you were saying, Ireland have a very much a growing economy, probably the fastest growing economy in Europe and one of the fastest in the world. But, still population size, it is quite small compared to other nations. So you've got to, especially with the UK being right next door, that's kind of still seen as the big brother nation. So working closely with them as much as possible is very, very crucial, I guess, to Irish success.
Absolutely. And I suppose that our economy, you talked about the economy at the moment. The economy is very good here in Ireland. We've nearly full employment. We're actually trying to recruit people to come back from Australia, New Zealand,
Mm,
Canada, whatever, to work in Ireland. We have a housing crisis, a shortage. It's very hard to get a house in Ireland, so we need to bring back construction workers, engineers,
mm,
professionals, to bolster up and increase the capacity. And we also have a population that's aging. We also have a very good thing in that our population is increasing year on year, and that's from net immigration coming into the country. Um, we are changing rapidly in terms of our the people that are here in this country and the variety of people who young people who are in our schools and in our colleges and whatever who are living here. So it bodes well for the future. But what we need to do is make sure that we have um, sufficient quality housing that families can live and where young people can actually buy a house and live in a house and own their own house.
exactly. And I think that's an issue across the whole entire world. Even in Australia, we've got a decent housing crisis as well. So, being able to own a home for a lot of young people is starting to feel like a distant dream for them. So, making sure that government, I guess, really prioritizes that sort of housing, especially for me and Tobias's generation, is really, really important.
Absolutely. And I suppose as my own background has been construction,
Mm,
and I trained as a quantity surveyor. I suppose you call him a cost manager in Australia, maybe. And I worked in the construction industry then for probably near 25 years in private sector, working with building contractors and working as an estimator, working as a project manager, a contracts director, and all of that. And
mm,
now I'm trying to bring that knowledge into politics so that we can actually see how we can do things quicker and better, and to deliver our housing quicker. So one of the things is it would be in that light would be the way with our methods of construction to have we need to invest more money in research to make sure that when we're building a house that we can prefab them and it's a quicker site build then and it's more efficient and less wastage and all of that. So that is something that has taken off. We have steel, timber framed, but we also have steel framed, and we also have concrete
Mm,
modular homes that are being built at the moment. So all of that's good, but we do need more young people to get involved. And I was a lecturer in Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, now the Atlantic Technical University, for a number of years in quantity surveying and contract law. And I think it's important that we continue the education and attract more people into the industry to try and boost up our capacity to deliver.
And speaking of education, I'd like to get straight into our questions then, Sean. So my first question to you is, how was your high school and university life? And do you have any memorable moments you'd like to share on the podcast?
Right. Well, I went to school. My primary school, we call it, was Belclare National School, and I
Okay.
spent. Well, I technically I spent 7 years there, where I should have spent 8 years. But what happened was I was born in December, and when
Mm,
I was 3.5, when I came on 4, my mother should have held on to me until the following June. But my older brother was going to school, so she let me off with him, and I started halfway through the year.
mm,
So then my teacher at the time, we were all, well, my parents were expecting that I would be kept back and do the full year. But the teacher says, no, he's good enough to keep going. So I skipped a bit of time in national school. And always say that poor teacher, Mrs. Stevens, she recognized something in me that I
mm,
didn't need to be held back. I needed to be let go. Um, my secondary education was in Tuam CBS in Tuam. There was a 5-year stint. And there I learned my favorite subjects were accountancy and economics. And for whatever reason, I love them. And Latin, actually, Latin, the Latin language, but also Latin history or Roman history. And we had some fantastic teachers and some fantastic um, people there. And we also had what we call a class called civics, and that was taught by Dr. Tony Claffey, who's still with us, lives down the road from my office here, and he instilled in us this thing about civic responsibility and doing projects in the community to help the community and stuff like that. When I finished in the Brothers, I did my Leaving Cert in 1975, and then I went to what was then known as the RTC, the Regional Technical College. It then became the Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, and it's now the Atlantic Technological University. And I spent 2 years there studying construction studies, and then I went and trained as a quantity surveyor, and had a great time there as a student. It was easy to keep us busy. We had plenty for doing. Lectures were good. At that time, a lot of the lecturers were part-time lecturers. They were also working in industry. So they gave us a great insight into how industry works. And instead of being over academic, they were preparing us in a way that we would actually be of benefit to the employers when we went out to work. And I think that was a great way of dealing with things at the time.
And I guess that
So
sort of, yeah, yeah, and I guess that sort of network with industry is very, very important, especially in a profession like quantity surveying.
yes, for project management or any of these courses, civil engineering. But what I meant was that we always had connections with industry, so that industry, if they were looking for students to take on placement, they knew where to go for them, and they knew they get quality. And there was also a feedback to say, well, you need to do better with these students or whatever, which was good. And it would be a fairly straightforward type of an arrangement. I would say that I didn't, when I was in college, I hadn't got my professional qualifications. So when I was when I was out working, I also studied part-time and got my chartership in quantity surveying. So I'm a member of, or was a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, a member of the Institute of Building IOB, and also a member of the CABE, which is the Chartered Association of Building Engineers. And I still do some ambassadorial work for CABE on the basis that it's just to promote them and promote their organisation and that type of thing. And it's good to keep in touch with industry as a politician to know exactly what the problems are and what the real problems are on the ground, not what you would hear be talked about in radio, television.
Exactly, exactly. You know, being connected to industry, especially as a quantity surveyor, and being connected to the building industry, which is so important to Ireland now, with the housing crisis, is so important, and you're able to relay back information to Parliament, and I guess as a crossbench politician, you know, not necessarily being part of the government, you're able to ask the government these sort of questions and hold them to account around, you know, what they're doing around the housing crisis.
And exactly, but the other thing as well is that, and I know that I would have made suggestions with others to the government, which they would have taken seriously. And one of them was a refurbishment grant for buildings which were idle and vacant for more than 2 years. There's a €50,000 grant if you take on one of these buildings to do it up and to convert it back into a residential. So we have a good bit of what we call vacant properties in our towns and our villages and out in the countryside. And we're beginning to see some of them come back into use as properties where families live. And especially it's nice to see it in the towns as well. So that was a suggestion. We built on it with the Minister for Housing, and he had the respect, knowing that what my background was, to actually listen. And I think that's the important thing as well.
Exactly, listening and being able to make informative decision when it
Yes,
comes to
absolutely.
that sort of thing. Yep. So talking about your career in quantity surveying, I believe that's going to relate to our next question here with Tobias.
Yeah, prior to Parliament, you worked in a quantity surveyor by professional. Uh, Working in the private sector for 25 years. Can you talk to us a bit about your career as a professional and what does this professional entail?
Okay, quantity surveying as a profession is the skill in actually being able to cost manage building projects, setting budgets, making sure the budgets are adhered to, and also taking corrective action if you're going over budget on a certain element of the project. So that's what I've done for about 25 years in the private sector. I worked with some building contractors, and the last contractor I was 24 years with that contractor, and I would have managed projects from €500,000 up to €200 million. A, so we were a regional building company, and then we progressed to being a national building company, building nationally across the country.
Hmm.
And I suppose it's very important to say that that time in industry gives you a good grounding and gives you a good attitude as to how to get things done. No matter what walk of life you're in, if you can't communicate with people, well, then you will not make a success of it. And I think when I was involved in private sector, communicating with people was a huge thing. And I also believe that one-to-one communication is way better than emails and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
you sort out problems, you get to know people, get to know their characteristics, and you get to know their strengths and their weaknesses so that you can actually help with their weaknesses and build on their strengths.
Mhm. Exactly, exactly. And you know, at the end of the day, two-way sort of communication between, you know, clientele or as a quantity surveyor, I guess would be very, very important. You know, being able to listen to their concerns, being able to understand where they're coming from, and being able to make decisions as a quantity surveyor in that sort of environment is very, very crucial.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. And I would also say that, the experience I've had in private sector have both probably given me a good grounding when I'm involved in politics, because again, it's the same set of basic rules. You've got to be able to communicate with people, you've got to be able to work with people, and you've got to be able to find the positive aspects to what people are saying and work on them to achieve results for the common good, rather than being a person who will tell you how you're doing everything wrong. So in opposition, I wouldn't say that I'm an opposition politician for the sake of it. I'm a constructive in opposition, so that if I can see something that we can do with the government, I will do it with them to make sure that people can actually benefit from it. So it's no big mystery. It's just having that confidence that you can deliver, and you get it from experience working with people all the time. That's what it's all about. Whether you're working with civil servants or whether you're working with politicians or ministers, it's the same thing. You've got to sit down, you've got to explain your thinking, and you've got to be able to um, convince others that what you were thinking is probably the right thing. You may not have it right all the time, which you won't. But if you sit down and talk to people, you probably get to a stage where you will refine what you want to do and make it more effective.
Exactly, 100% agree with you there, Sean. So, moving on to our next question. You have spoken about this previously in the podcast and interview so far. So, additionally, you lectured in construction economics and quantity surveying at the Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, GMIT, for more than 9 years. How important is education to the people of Ireland, and what are some of the rewards in your opinion about being an educator and being able to lecture, say, in a university or a school of technology?
Well, I think anybody who's fortunate enough to be in a position to be able to um, teach young people or not so young people, um, it's a very fulfilling job because when you see people, young people especially, or older people who decide to go back to education, and when they start out, they are very unsure as to how will progress themselves. But when you see young people going through a system of education, doing a program, and then going out to work in industry, and you see how they develop over maybe 3 or 4 years, and you see how they become more confident, how they become professional, and how they can then contribute to the overall society. The job is very fulfilling for me. Working with young people, I think it's important to say young people will bring the best out of anybody and they
Mm.
will challenge you in a good way. Education, how important is education? It's vital. It's the foundation of everything. If you give somebody an education, a good education, it's a good foundation. It will give people confidence. It will give people um, opportunity, and also it will give people the chance to actually explore what they want to do in life. And I think nowadays people change careers because they have education and they have that agility and adaptability to actually say, right, okay, I've done that type of job for so long, now I will do something else rather than be stuck in the one job all of their lives. So I do believe that Ireland's success as an economy has been based on our education system. Every FDI company that looks at Ireland, they're looking to see have we got an education system that can produce the people who can actually run uh, factories or run research institutes for their company. Can we do it successfully and can we do it to high standards? And I do believe that that is one of the biggest um, factors in attracting foreign direct investment to this country is the education we give and the access we have to uh, second level and third level education, and also the connectivity and the connection between the education system and industry.
Exactly. And as you were saying, education is really the start of the nation, and it is the most important thing. It's the biggest building block, in educating the young people to make sure that they are able to be productive, to be even more productive and be more skilled than the current generation and the generations before them. So, the country can continue to progress and move forward. And I know the Irish, the UK, and even the Australian school systems have been some of the probably the best in the whole world. So our education systems have really pushed our nations really forward and made us some of the most attractive and most lucrative economies in the whole entire world.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that when you think about it, when our my parents were young, they didn't get the same opportunity at education that I've got. But
Mm.
what they did, and that generation, what they did was they biggest motivation was to give us, or my generation, a good education. My mother didn't pass national school. She left school when she was 12. My father left school probably when he was 14 or 15. And basically, they realized in life what they were missing by not having a full education. And they would have said to us, and it was their ambition for us to get as much education as we wanted to go for, and not to impede us in any way, and not to put pressure on us to go working, but to get education first, and the work would follow. And I
Mm.
think that particular generation have a lot. We've a lot to be thankful for that. That's the attitude they took because back in time, we had very little education in Ireland, and 100 years ago, it was pretty scant what we could do.
Mm. Mm. And as many people might know as well, the Irish population has seen quite a rise and fall. I know my great grandparents, so yeah, were part of that generation in the 1860s and 70s who left Ireland to come seek a better life. So there was a big, yeah, I think at one point the population was at 8.5 million, and then it fell all the way down to about 2, 3 million. Now it's slowly getting back up again, but it has seen such a tumultuous time in terms of population growth and population decline.
Yes, absolutely. And we're now at over 5.3 million, which is the
Mm.
highest in a long, long time. And we are growing. Our population is increasing again. We have challenges in terms of our demographics. We have an aging population
Like
as
most
well,
nations.
like most nations, but most modern nations. So basically, we have all these challenges, but they're good challenges now. And I think we have the means and the tools by which we can deal with all of that.
Mhm. And as you were saying as well, the groundwork that your parents' generation set out, especially, with a lot of them, with a lot of people, previously from your parents' generation, probably their parents, a lot of people in that generation left the country. So the groundwork that they set up, instilling education and bringing it forward for your generation, especially, has really set up the success and growth of Ireland over the past 20 to 30 years.
Absolutely. And when you think about it back in the 60s when we brought in the government of the day brought in free education, it was a milestone in terms of the attitude towards education. And whilst it's not totally free, education is available and is a right that everybody has now. And we have still to build on what we have, and we have to keep improving it, and we have to keep still setting standards, and that's what life is about. We cannot stand still, or we cannot rest on our laurels, and I think we have a great basis to continue to be a leading nation in providing education.
Mhm. Hopefully for Sean, and I know that will be instilled within the whole Irish economy into the future. So, moving on now to our fourth question, I believe this is with Tobias, and this talks a little bit about your time as a community representative in Galway.
Yeah, uh, you've been an active community member in Galway, s- serving as mayor, public relations officer, and a member of the Corf Corfin. Is that right?
Corofed,
Yeah, Corfin GAA.
yeah.
How important is it as a politician to have a strong local connection to your community? What are some of the benefits and also challenges about being an active member in your local community?
Well, I'd say that first of all, yeah, I was involved when I was in school. I was involved in a local youth club, organising buses to go to discos and stuff like that. So it was kind of a natural progression that I would get involved in the community and community work. So basically, I joined the community council in Belclare, and we were a voluntary group that provided facilities and also provided events for the people in the community. And we have developed sports facilities, we've developed community facilities, we have done all of these things. And I think that the young people in the community are reaping the rewards, and as are the older people, because they now have sporting facilities, walking, leisure facilities, they have out in the fresh air, we have children's playground, we have all of that type of thing. We have an all-weather surface where people can play in the winter time because we have a lot of rain. So basically, that is the benefit of working in the community. We have I've been involved in the community since 1990, and I think every year I'm involved in it. I never say I must. This is my last year because I feel
Mm.
it's also very fulfilling, and it's also something that you do without thinking about it because you're doing it for your own and your family and your extended family
Exactly.
and your neighbors and your friends. And when everybody is doing it together, it becomes very easy.
Mhm.
Um, we have a GA club which is very successful in the parish, Corofin GA club. I'm a member of that. I was an officer in that club when I was younger. I played football for the club, and I have a
Mhm.
great association with the club now all the time. And I would say that it is important as a politician that you have that grounding and that understanding of the challenges that people have in communities, especially in rural communities where the challenges are a bit different from what you have in an urban setting. So it is important and to keep in touch with things. And again, when you see things, you say, well, maybe if we did something different, I can bring that to a minister and say, I think, the way we're doing funding for certain projects, maybe we should tweak it to do it a bit differently to make it more efficient and also to give more money to the people. So our government are good at giving financial supports to communities, both in terms of sporting groups through the capital sports grants. We have community centres, investment funds, we have all of that type of thing. And it's people living in communities who spot a project that needs to be done, see a demand for it, put the application together, put the case together, and they're very successful. And there are hundreds of organizations who get funding from these type of grant aid, and they make the difference in communities. And the communities then, when they're doing these projects, they are doing them very efficiently because they know that they have limited resource, and it's important that we don't waste money or anything like that. So we get great value, and the state and society gets great value out of that.
Hmm.
So I think that being involved in the community, being involved in the community council, being involved in the sporting club, you understand the challenges, you understand what might be a problem, and you can bring that to government and say, well, right, okay, there is an issue here, but if it's in my particular community or my particular club, you can rest assured that that problem is manifesting itself right across the country. So it is something that I do believe that anybody who's involved in politics need to have a grounding in both local government as well as in community activity. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I 100% agree with you there, Sean, because at the end of the day, you are community representatives before, being a minister, before being a cabinet member in the government. So you've got to represent your community's interests and being connected and being well versed in what the community needs, especially around sporting clubs, around social social activities, that sort of thing, and being able to fund these sort of activities is really, really important. So being well connected and understanding the issues that the community faced, as we've talked about so much on this interview so far, is really, really crucial to being a great local representative.
Absolutely. And I would say that, when you're involved in community, you're doing fundraising. And the important thing about that is you're raising funds which are to do a project. So you have to make sure that your responsibility then to make sure that that funding is spent right, that it is actually delivering the best outcome for everybody. And I think there's a responsibility there, but there's also a learning curve to make sure that you understand that you're making a decision for the community, not for yourself. And that
Exactly.
it's important that you make it in that spirit rather than thinking about yourself.
I've got the next question for you, Sean. So this is a quite a big question on the podcast. So who would you actually say is your political role model or idol?
Oh God. I would say that looking back in time, who would I have been modeling myself on? I do believe that the likes of what do I see now? Who would I model myself on? Not
Michael
necessarily
Collins,
model
maybe?
myself on, but I would take some of the qualities from people like Eamon O'Queeve, who's
Maybe Mark.
passionate about local communities. And I would see him as being a guy that I would have taken notice of when I was younger. I would say that if you look at politicians in the west of Ireland, I would say that the likes of what do you call him, your man. There was a guy in I suppose most politicians they're all different and they're all but guys who were straight talking like John McGuinness in Kilkenny is straight talking. Michael Ring in Mayo is another politician who says it as it is and doesn't gloss it up. Very effective at what he does, and it's also both of them wouldn't be afraid to take on the responsibility of being in government to make sure they can deliver on things, you know. So I would say that would be it. I would think that everybody in Ireland would say that John F. Kennedy was an inspiration or an influence on their lives from an American point of view, and I do believe that he did instill in us in Ireland a sense that politics was important, and I think it may not be as good now in America as it is here in terms
It's
of politics, but we have I think we have a very good democracy here in Ireland, and I think that's the important thing.
exactly, exactly. At the end of the day, as we were talking to Cathal Bailey, last week, he also did say JFK was another political hero and idol of his, and he came up with a famous quote as well. He said, every single household growing up as a kid would have either one of two paintings. They'd either have one of the Pope, or one of JFK. So it'd have to be, and they would probably have both sometimes in every household. So
Yeah,
there was a very
absolutely.
instilling and
Yeah,
important figure in Irish culture during the 50s and
absolutely.
60s.
Yes, 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 yes. And I suppose the other thing I'd say that you know, other politicians is true that would influence you or leave a mark in your mind. But I think your parents also and your family
Mm,
are very important to a politician in terms of support and influence, and also to as the go-to people that you can go back to. And if you have that, because sometimes being a politician, you have to make decisions, especially as an independent, you make decisions and you're not following a party whip. You're making each decision on your own, on their own
exactly.
merit. So you need to have some sort of a reference point, and I think family are very influential in that.
Exactly. Those family values and those family, I guess, cultures instilled in you from a young age is really, really important. And it does
Absolutely,
it does reflect, I guess, your politics and how you are in the future as a human being.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So moving on now to our second last question then for you, Sean.
Sure.
I believe this is with Tobias.
Yeah. What made you run in the 2016 Irish election, and what made you run as an independent?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll answer the second part first. I've always been an independent politician. When I first went for election as a county councillor, I was independent. I feel as an independent, I could offer an unfettered outlook and sense of purpose without actually being shackled by party political instructions. Um, I did run in the 2011 general election and I performed reasonably well. You know, I was within maybe 400 or 500 votes of getting elected.
Okay.
So I decided a short time after that, well, there's a good basis there for which I should have one other go at it. And if I was successful, we'd see how it would go. That's why I had a go in 2016. I was successful and I topped the poll. And in 2020, I topped the poll again. But the important thing is that in the meantime, I was working to improve my uh, how that people knew me, what I was all about, meeting people and stuff like that. And I would say that when I did go for election, I was at a stage in my life where um, I had done maybe 30 years, 40 years of work, and I had a lot of experience, and I thought that maybe it would be time to contribute to political life if I was afforded the opportunity, and if the people thought that I could do that, and if I would be good at it. So I'm honoured and delighted that I got elected and that I was a minister in government. And I think it's important that as an independent, my contribution then was because it was for the good of the people, not for me and the good for the people in the constituency. But I do believe that you make a contribution in life, in public life, and I think it's good, self-fulfilling, and it also is good for those around you.
Exactly, exactly. And at the end of the day, as we're looking at your election results, you've done quite well in Galway East, being able to win and getting the highest first preference vote, in the whole in the whole county per candidate, in the whole constituency, sorry, for per candidate. So you must be doing something right as a representative in Galway East, if and hopefully all the same is hopefully the same goes for the next election. I'm in a hopefully maybe in a couple of months' time, maybe in a couple of weeks' time, Sean. So
Yeah,
wishing
yeah.
you all the best there. So you must be doing something quite well as a independent representative if the constituents are electing you quite well.
I think that there's no secret in it. What you do is you work hard, you work honestly, and you do your best for people, and that's it. You don't try and fob them off. You don't try and ignore people. People are who were the people's representatives, and when you're in the Dáil, you're a privileged position that you can sit in the chamber and make a contribution. So I think it's important that we value that as being something unique. That I get an opportunity to do that. I'm so honoured to be able to do that.
Exactly, exactly. And moving on now to our final question then for you, Sean. So, finally, what's some advice you'd give to students in 2024, especially those who I know in Ireland would be starting university or high school now?
I would say that remain focused. I think that it is important that if you're go, going for a course or a degree course in university, that you remain focused on it. You don't get distracted by other things. And the other thing is, it's very important to say that if you find that the course you're doing is not for you, don't suffer it.
Mhm.
Change courses and do some other course because it is important that you have that agility and you also have that courage to say, this is not for me, or that you might want to take a year out to decide what actually you want to do, rather than be pressurized into doing something in your own head and finding that you're not happy at it, or it's not actually what you want to do. Also,
Exactly.
young people have a lot of pressures on them, and a lot of distractions can be there. I think the biggest challenge is how you manage social media going forward. In my time, I didn't have it, so it was easy enough to manage things. And social media is a good thing. It's a thing for to communicate. You can do it. It's great. It's a great invention. It's just that sometimes social media can become a platform where people get tied up in the wrong things and get people can abuse other people on it and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And the other thing is that when you are in college, make sure that you try and foster some friendships with other people so that if you have a problem with anything, you have somebody you can say hello to even. It's a big thing. And especially if you're going to college in first year, it's different from when you are in secondary school because when you go to college, the first thing you have to do is you have to decide whether you're going to get up in the morning to go to college.
Exactly.
Your parents, your parents,
There's no
your
one
parents
stopping you from not turning up.
And I used to say to everybody, the first decision you make every morning is when you wake up is to get out of bed, get ready, and come into college. If you come into college every day that you have lectures, and you will get through your college. But if you're at home and decide not to come in, and that becomes a habit, you'll end up that you are missing out on your education, and that's not right. So first year is the year where you learn how to make these decisions, and they're simple decisions. Will I go into college, or will I wait watching television, or watching the social media, or what will I do? And you can enjoy yourself, absolutely, but you need to have that, I suppose, determination that I will do the core thing, which is to get my education, and that I will enjoy everything else on top of that.
Exactly, exactly. At the end of the day, you go to universities, especially now in Australia, which it's quite high fee paying. So you go to university to learn, and you go to university to go to classes, and missing out on that sort of thing. Like I remember one of my tutors and lecturers from last semester was saying that like basically because we have 12 classes within a semester, and he's saying you're basically paying me like 200, $300, and some of you don't even turn up to the tutorials and lectures. So I don't get the point of why you're not coming for a 2 hour class when you're paying $200 for it at the end of the day. So it's really, really important to come to class all the time and be able to, I guess, ask questions, especially with your teacher at the time who's very experienced in the subject, and ask questions of your classmates if you're struggling with things. Because at the end of the day, if you're at home by yourself, you're not going to be probably productive, and you're not going to be able to get a lot of work done at all.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I think young people are the future. So I wish everybody luck that goes into a college or goes into a university. goes into a trade. It's all training or whatever. But I do believe there's a place for everybody. Not everybody needs to go to university as well. Not everybody needs to go to college. And I think people will find their own level in time. It's just that do whatever you think you yourself would like to do and make that decision, and let there be no pressure on you to do something you don't want to do.
Exactly. 100% agree with you there, Sean. So those are all our questions. Again, for you, Sean, I do really appreciate you coming on the podcast and speaking to us for nearly an hour now and saving an hour of your busy time, especially with an upcoming election coming up, a lot of campaigning and that sort of thing. So do appreciate you coming on the podcast and speaking to us about your career before politics, your time in Parliament, and some advice you give to students, especially those who are starting university and high school this year.
Been a pleasure, and best luck to you. Two fine, good young lads, and keep up the good work.